Of course, I mean, my father actually, my love of motorsport actually grew thanks to Brooklands, because my dad lived near Brooklands and was drawn to that racetrack in the 1920s to watch these huge aero engine machines roaring around the banking of Brooklands. They were perfect for that because it was full throttle, you didn't have too much cornering. So my dad fell in love with motorsport then, and then he took me to Goodwood. So my love of motorsport actually began with these aero engines machines. What have you actually got? You've got Babs, of course, which famously killed its owner.
It did. I mean, Babs, it's a sort of sad but still amazing story, because unfortunately the chap who first built it, eventually he was sort of used for a bit of racing, and then this other guy bought it, and then unfortunately then he did come to an untimely death on Pendine Sands. And the car was sort of in the accident. The car sort of just tumbled and flung into the sand dunes. And unbelievably was sort of left there. So it just got buried and they just left it. I guess obviously it was a almost horrible time. And then I think it was some 40 years later, a chap, I know where it is, I've got a metal detector, off you go, and he actually kind of dug the thing out, has restored it, and has been racing it ever since. It's a wonderful story.
Well, what plane did that engine come out of?
Now you're asking, I've actually already forgotten that. I think it was is that the Zeppelin one? I'm not sure. Anyway, it's about 600 horsepower, and it's a monster, and it sounds fantastic. And what's really interesting as well is the aero that they were playing with at the time as well, because of course they kind of even then they knew about. The very first speed record ever was an electric car, which is incredible. But it's just they were playing with aero even then. So of course it's just like, okay, so when it comes out of an aeroplane, they've got a head start, haven't they?
It's funny, electric cars is all new, but as you said, they held the world speed record. A steam car held the world land speed record for a while, so nothing's really new in motoring engineering. You've got two little GNs. I love the way all the valves are exposed up in the valves.
It's wonderful, and that's what makes them so exciting, because it's actually almost like the kind of Victorian engineering of the time, which is before, where everything was exposed but celebrated, and it's the same thing with the aero. Of course, it was about weight or lack of course, in an aeroplane, but it works so well. And what's lovely about the two GNs is there's two different ways of doing the same kind of thing, two different engines in two different ways. Obviously the paint jobs are fun in themselves, but actually you really have to go and have a look at them, because there's lots of really lovely details, and you can really see how an engine works. Nowadays all the plastic covers over the top, it's very difficult to know what's going on. There you can actually see the valves going up and down. It's wonderful.
I just find yesterday you fired up the Delage. Have you been allowed to do it again?
Yeah, well, we've just been having a chat actually. I think it looks like we're going to get the go-ahead, so hopefully for the rest of today, maybe tomorrow, we're going to have a couple of goes.
What time might that happen?
I have no idea yet, so you're going to have to watch this space, but it's the Hispano Suiza Delage. It's got, again, it's sort of, I think it's an 18-litre engine, it's sort of 600 odd horsepower, and of course, when you think about it, it's round the wrong way, because the propeller would be where the driver is at the moment, because obviously that's driving the wheels. And of course, originally they're cooled by sort of heat exchangers that go down either side of the aeroplane, so it's got a little radiator in the front, so the cab is definitely the hot seat in many ways.
Anyway, make sure you look at the stand and hopefully you'll hear it fire up. But of course, you're most famous as the man problem solving on Wheeler Dealers. There was a small divorce that nobody really noticed, and everyone's wondering, what have you been doing since, though?
I've been having a laugh. It's been amazing. It's been I think it's probably 3 years now, actually, but it's one of those things. It was quite intense, 13 years, and it got more and more intense as we went on. So by the end, we were doing 20 episodes a year, which nearly killed us, frankly. It's an awful lot of work to do, and obviously, I'd also made a bit of a rod for our own back, because I wanted to make sure every job we ever did was different to the other ones. And so even if we had to do the same subject matter, the brakes or whatever, again, it was about how do we do that differently, how do we cover a different aspect. And of course that just makes it really, really hard to keep going. So, and then the Americans bought the show or dragged it over to America, and so that kind of changed things a little bit as well. And it was lovely living in California. It's completely unreal as a place, but it's a wonderful thing, and there's lots of new adventures to be had. But at the end of the day, after 13 years, it sounded like a good time to go out on a high. And I wanted to do all the things I just hadn't been able to do, because of course when you're working all the hours there are, it's like, well, what about this thing, what about that thing? So as you probably noticed on the last series, we did a Maserati that we electrified, and I've been trying to do that for a long time, but that was a great project. And then we did the Peking to Paris sort of Cadillac as well, and we've actually got the other car, you might remember, that we had to buy to get the engine to borrow. Well, that's actually here in the pit, so theoretically if I get the thing to start again, we're going to be coming up and down the hill, or the hill, it's not really a hill, the track, the Grand Avenue.
Well, the Grand Avenue shows, there's still 3 to go today, or 2 more to go today. It's all about firsts.
It
So
is.
what was the first for that car then?
Well, it's actually quite special because the Cadillac was the first production V8 for one thing. So in 1914, so it's an 18, but it's exactly the same engine, or certainly the block. And then it's also the first car to have all the controls in the way that we remember them today. Because of course Henry Ford messed about with the pedals in a different order. Used to have handbrake levers and gears outside. So also this was inside. It had a key ignition. It's also very new. And of course it's also the car with the first actually starter, electric starter, which is great. And that was a very sad story where the owner of Cadillac, his best mate, actually died because it broke his jaw with one of these, you know, like the kickback, and he got sepsis and died. It was all very nasty. And so he just said, right, we're going to sort this out. So he got together with AC Delco, and they actually invented effectively the first starter motor, and probably really the death of the steam and electric cars at the time, unfortunately. But you know, so it's a really special car. I mean, it's amazing. There are so many features on that. When it came out of the factory, the exhaust system had ceramic coated sort of steel, if you like, and of course we think of that as a very modern racing car technology, but that was out of the factory, but it has a compressor on the back of the gearbox to pump up the tyres. I mean, it was covered in luxury. It was a wonderful car.
Nothing's new, you see, again. So how did you get started? Have you got a certificate in engineering? How did you get this mad world you now live in?
I have a sort of a reluctant degree in engineering product design. Took me a while to get it, but it was actually, you know, it was a great grounding for that. It was just really about problem solving and things. And I suppose I grew up on Lego. You know, everybody knows Lego. It's a great way to sort of to learn how to put things together and get into detail of stuff. And then,
especially now with the Formula One, you got pistons. You build the engines.
Yeah, it's
Lego
amazing.
now.
No, it really is amazing. We just had just the blocks back in the day and a couple of wheels, but no, it was good stuff. And then I just kind of took a lot of things apart and then eventually started putting them back together again. And then of course you end up with hopefully working things that actually work slightly better. And I guess I kind of developed an understanding of how stuff works.
Did you have a job? Did you actually work with someone initially? Or have you always been your own world?
No. Well, I had lots of sort of part-time jobs in different places, and I think I did design and technology at school, of course, as well. We actually get to make stuff a lot. I mean, I did a bit of programming when I was a kid, and unfortunately stopped it just before I made any money. You know, but it was it's all about just creating stuff in whatever realm that might be. And I think, you know, and I had one of my earliest jobs was while I was at university. I did the special effects for Father Ted, the second series. So we're making all kinds of weird stuff for that. So it's just misappropriating technology, basically.
Because I mean, we all know you got the sofa that I drove at a Top Gear live show in
some time ago, yes.
94 or 5, which is on your stand over there. It is. Stand.
Yeah.
Was that the first? What was the first wacky? Why did you suddenly think of these wacky things? Was that the first one?
Yeah, well, it was one just before that. We actually did. You know, when you're a kid, you get down to all these car shows, and we did this run down to Newquay, and we happened to end up in the back of a shot of like it was in Top Gear magazine or something. And then so the next year, I thought we're going to try and get actually in the shot. So we actually cut a roof off a Beetle, welded up the doors, covered it in fur, as you would, and then we drove down dressed as caveman. It made sense to us at the time, and we did actually get it into Top Gear magazine at the time. And then I guess because of that, the sofa then, I mean, while I was doing the special effects, we made Father Jack a wheelchair that was powered, so we'd go backwards up a hill because he was supposed to be possessed, and this thing would do like 20 miles an hour on the flat with no steering, because he couldn't act and steer at the same time, and it was all done with little sort of dead man sort of controls. And then I just thought, well, maybe the sofa would be great. Maybe you could go to a restaurant, order a pizza, but still be in your living room. Everybody's, that's really dumb. So of course, the more I was told it was stupid, the more I had to do it, and that is how all that started, really.
Still a child at heart. So weird stuff is one thing, but actual classic cars. When did you start moving into? Have you owned? What was your first classic?
Yeah, well, my first car, I suppose, is now a classic, which was a Beetle, a 1303 Beetle in Texas yellow, and it was kind of I guess that was again the baptism of fire. My parents had been sort of playing with minis for many years, and so I didn't have any of the right tools. They were all imperial tools rather than metric tools, and you know, so I just learned the hard way about using the right tool for the job, for one thing, and then also. But what's great about Beetles, of course, is they're very interchangeable over, you know, sort of many years. You can take the flywheel off one or the engine off one and put it onto something else. So and that's why I started to mess with stuff, because I don't like things as standard, obviously.
No.
And I think so that was kind of how I got into that, and I guess that I ended up crashing the car, turned it into a beach buggy, and then it just kind of went on from there. And then he's like putting bigger engines into silly places that you like had vans with like an Alfa Romeo engine, then a Rover V8, and then an American V8, and so it went on. So it was just really like, can I do that? Yeah, I'll give it a go.
So what's the most exciting of all these products? I mean, everything you do must be exciting because it's all weird. So what really got you going?
Well, I think probably actually, I mean, there's so many cars we were doing on the show, and obviously there's lots of madness. I mean, the sofa is one of the reasons it's here, 21st anniversary. It's a really great way. It's how I met my wife, for one thing. So Imogen's over there. So you know, it was a wonderful sort of experience. But actually, on the show, possibly the Cadillac, the 1916 Cadillac. It was really fun. We bought this, much to Mike's consternation, we actually bought this sort of jigsaw puzzle of rust, basically, that was supposed to be a car. And it was a mad thing. So it's this 1916 car, and then we got to turn it into a rally car as if we were in Edwardian times. So I used things like the air horns off a train from 1907, had the springs to make the seat more comfortable off a tractor from 1911 and stuff. And so I was trying to put my head into that space. If I was an eccentric Edwardian, how would I get over these problems, and how would I make a rally car? And that was such an adventure and really hard work.
But you've now got into, and it's a debate that's coming at about 2:30 this afternoon, a very heated debate. You started electrifying classics, which is controversial.
Well, you say it's controversial. I think it's obvious. I mean, it is the way forward. We need to
it's obvious that you're ruining a really nice classic car by putting an electric engine in it. That's what's obvious.
We're cherishing it and giving it future life. I mean, at the end of the day, obviously, at some point we are going to have to deal with the fact that we are destroying the planet. We're nicking energy from millions of years before.
Yes, but 3 classic cars electrified is not going to make a difference.
Well, let's do all of them then.
Then that would destroy all the classic cars.
It won't destroy them. You're actually making them more valuable and more usable, and I think that's really the key. You've got to do it sympathetically, and obviously there are going to be some cars you just can't do because like a Dodge Charger, a Mustang. It's all about the engine. And obviously, yeah, sure, the silhouette's wonderful, but it's kind of like part of that driving experience. What makes it so visceral is that noise, and that's hard to emulate with the electric style. But the actual acceleration, there's something quite awesome about actually having silence and blasting down the highway. I mean, it's an amazing thing. So you need to try having a go anyway, even in a more like an OEM, like a production car now. But the classic, when it's electric, it just means when you come to it, it always has a full tank of fuel, effectively, because it's going to be charged up at home. It's going to turn every time. It's going to work. You haven't got to tinker with it. You can still fiddle with some of it.
I've seen Teslas burning to death on the highway. Every time it's going to work, I plug things in and the fuse blows. They don't. Every time it is no. I don't believe you.
And you've never seen a classic car on fire on time?
I have, but you're implying that electric car would work every time. I'm just pointing out that they do occasionally burst into flames.
Okay, there's a tiny caveat, but whatever. It'll be fine. It's the way forward. It's certainly a way forward, which we should look at.
All fun and game. Not as much fun, but do you actually build an electric motor yourself, or you just buy them so far? They're not as much fun, do you? You can't build the engine, can you?
Well, you don't know normally, but you can do. I think the thing is, but most people probably don't. I mean, you might put an engine together, but you might buy a certain amount of components. I think the difficult bit or the dangerous bit is the batteries, just like petrol. Obviously, you shouldn't be fiddling with that if you can help it, and I think that's where it's kind of difficult. I think soon, I'm sure there'll be kits and things to actually build your own motors. I mean, obviously, they're not easy things to play with. You've got some rare earth magnets, you've got lots of copper winding and stuff, but it's doable. People have been doing it for years, so I think it'll be a fun part, and it's part of the development of that process, is making it accessible, making it cheap enough, and then making it so you can fiddle with it, frankly.
There you go. But more wacky things go back to better things. Ice cream van. You got some records as well. Is that a record holder?
It is, yes. So I mean, basically that was just a bit of fun. We do a lot of stuff with Guinness World Records. Just, I guess, because once you've got one, you can't really stop. So we started with the sofa. Actually, it was the world's first fastest furniture, 87 miles an hour back in the day, and that is quite windy. And don't do that in the rain because it really hurts. But that was good fun. And then we did the bed and the sort of like giant shopping trolleys and office and the shed and all this. And the ice cream van, we thought we'd give it a go. Do the world's fastest ice cream van. But Jody Scheckter has the XJ220 powered Transit that he then converted to an ice cream van, and so apparently that could do 200 miles an hour, which I'd love to see. So I thought, let's do an electric version just to see what happens. And then having said yes, I can do that, I suddenly realised that means you have to actually power the ice cream machine electrically as well, which of course from the 60s has been done powered by the engine, which means that's why you get your diesel fumes. So I thought, well, actually I get to save the world a tiny little bit as well. And so what we can do now, I've now developed a kit which can convert all ice cream vans to electric power, which means then, of course, we no longer have to have diesel fumes.
Yeah, that is the worst thing, I must admit. Queuing up for your ice cream with diesel foam fumes in your nose.
It's a crazy idea, so I can fix that.
So you can still have your diesel ice cream van, you don't have to have the full conversion, but you could put on, take the switch the diesel off, just use your...
And then just make ice cream electrically for the rest of the day.
Patented. Did you get to patents with all your
You can patent bits and pieces, yeah, you get a lot of design rights and stuff, but I mean, normally what I'm doing is kind of applying technology or putting things together that might not otherwise have been connected.
But then his battery goes flat and he can't restart his diesel engine.
Yeah, no, it's different batteries, it's alright, we thought of that.
But now you're talking about inventions, so maybe maybe not something you've done, what innovations do you admire the most? Have you got any heroes of engineering that you sort of...
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a few. I mean, obviously Brunel is a superhero, I think, and you have obviously Da Vinci. I guess he was probably one of the first awesome engineers. I mean, the stuff that he predicted or invented or whatever back in the day was incredible. But I mean, also there's lesser known people, Buckminster Fuller. So he came up, we know the Epcot Center over in Florida, it's basically a thing full of triangles. So he was a geometrist ultimately, he was a very clever engineer. And he kind of described, or basically not really discovered, but sort of created that maths to make that happen. But he also predicted carbon-60 buckyballs. So we all hear about graphene these days, but it was basically, if you imagine you make a football out of carbon molecule, and it's a really strong, amazing product that they're using for all kinds of things these days. So, you know, he was a very clever guy, and he just applied his engineering skill to all kinds of aspects of our lives. And I think that's really what we all should be doing. I mean, so, you know, it's design and engineering is really how we solve our problems throughout the world.
But the trouble is now we're in this horrible throwaway society. You know, the dishwasher stops working, so you get a new one. Your Hoover stops working, you get a new one. And in cars, you open the bonnet and you see a massive plastic. Do you think we're losing love of engineering, and so, you know, we're getting worse and worse at just throwing? Or is this electric? Is this new era going to change that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think as a society we've got much more blasé about it because it's somebody else's problem. But I think, you know, we're also beginning to miss it a little bit. I think that's why we find, you know, sort of coming to car shows really interesting, because you get to see, that's again what's so great about the aero engines, is because you can see how it actually works, you can see the heartbeat of the vehicle. And I think when you start looking, that's what the Victorians did so well, they celebrated the engineering. And I think, I'm hoping that we're now sort of in a sort of beginning of a renaissance, so it might take a few years, but where we actually get to appreciate engineering and design. And obviously, we have a lot of really big problems to solve around the world, and we need engineers and designers to do that. And I think, you know, that's where it starts here. So I think part of our mission, if you like, as our old guard as we now are, is to try and inspire the younger generation to actually, you know, think about it a bit more and actually to solve the problems that we've caused, frankly.
In fact, we had an interesting debate this morning, the early debate with a guild that's creating new apprenticeships for classic cars. So there's a whole new world of apprenticeships available for people that don't want to go to university and be too brainy. But with classic cars growing so much, especially in motorsport, lots of opportunities. So there are these wonderful skills that Ed has that you can learn and do apprenticeships. But what are you actually building at the moment? There must be something in build.
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of things sort of up my sleeve, shall we say. So, and obviously we're still playing around with the electric stuff, and we're going to actually get the ice cream product into production, basically. And then we're looking at a couple of other classics, and so we're sort of looking at different solutions. We have a new company called EV Emporium, which is about trying to sell the parts and plug-and-play kits, really, to convert classic vehicles. So we'll take some of the guesswork, if you like, out of it, because again, we've got to keep it safe. So we're going to hopefully facilitate that wonderful rush with that. But also, I'm still working, obviously, on some TV stuff as well. So
that's what I'm aware. That's what it says.
That's what you're all here for. Well, the thing is, we did a pilot last year called Garage Revival, which we did this kind of little golf mart one in Norway, which was great fun. And we basically put out a whole lot of requests for videos and stuff. So we had loads of really great stories come in. So we now have a nice list of projects we can go and help with. And we're also just tweaking the show because we need to get it onto the right channel and the right format and stuff. So that'll come sometime soonish. As always, this world is very fickle, so it's difficult to say any date. We'll wait till after Brexit. How about blaming it on that?
You say we, I mean, you've got a team.
Well, of course we have a team. Obviously, I have my lovely wife, but we have, you know, sort of producers and other guys around, and the people we've worked with.
In the actual mechanical, in the workshop.
Well, we've got to have a good old Paul, of course, as well. I haven't spoken to him for ages, actually, because he's been busy doing other TV stuff, actually. But, you know, it's one of the things you can't do. It has to be a team collaboration. Yeah, I can't do it on my own. You know, we didn't before. You know, it's all about just making sure that we do it right for the audience. I think that's really the key, and that takes a lot of effort, and that takes a lot of people.
But we're at the classic car show. I mean, are you just a modifier, or is there a genuine original? Would you buy an original classic car, not touch it, just keep it as it was, or you can't?
Well, I have the Cadillac here. So I've got the 1918 Cadillac, and so that is completely stock, and it's a wonderful, confusing vehicle, because obviously, even though it's the first and it's very familiar to all the, compared to the cars we have now, there's lots of little quirks and stuff that you have to. So you have to tickle it into life. So that's quite fun. But there are so many cars that, you know, I'd be very tempted. I mean, the Jensens still stir something. We would love one of those, and I think, you know, there's lots of other vehicles here, but I think what I have learned, you can't. Well, for me anyway, I can't hoard a ton of cars. There's a reason for that also over there. But I can't keep
the budget. The accounting,
but exactly, you think is you can. I think you can only look after so many unless you've got your own mechanic.
Have you got anything? Have you got little your Cadillac?
Well, right this second, they've got the Cadillacs, and we've actually got the sofa and all the other crazy cars.
Yeah, classic cars.
But other than that, classic standard cars, I haven't got anything at the moment between classics beyond the veteran ones.
And nor have I. Everybody says, what have you got in your garage? Thinking I've got 10 Ferraris and 5 Lamborghinis. Everyone, we don't all earn the same as Jeremy Fatkitt Clark.
He took all the money. That's the problem. He took all the money out of the business.
Normal TV presenters do not all earn £1 million a year, so sadly my garage has got a lawnmower and a quad bike in it. I do have my Formula Ford Lotus, which is my very first racing car that I bought back 5 years ago when I raced again down historic racing. And I work on that. I change all the gear ratios and still really enjoy being an engineer, because you could do it in those days. At least they're wonderful to. It's enjoyable working on older cars because you can.
But also, I think you hit the nail on the head that as well, because it has a purpose for you. And I think that's the thing. I think it's great to have car collections. Obviously, it works really well for some people, and obviously, Quentin always talks about how much of an investment there is.
I know, I've got 4 of those. I know, I've got 5 of those. They'll make money.
But the thing is,
make money.
I promised myself one day we are going to get a proper veteran car, if you can go do the London to Brighton, because that's a really, really fun event.
It's freezing cold.
It's freezing cold.
People do the
London,
you get to wear fur coats on, and they're freezing. It always breaks down, and it goes about 5 miles. I never want to do things like that.
But you said earlier that you like to tinker with a classic, and that's exactly the same thing. So you get to wear an amazing amount of tweed.
Classic.
What's not to like there for a start? And then you get to tinker with a car that's got 1 cylinder, like 8 horsepower. But it's really great fun, and it's also, it goes back to that amazing, because we're in a really interesting pioneering time right now. It's kind of like the Wild West of EVs, and so everybody's trying to solve the same problems. And of course, back in Edwardian times, that's exactly what was going on then. You had all these bicycle manufacturers having a go at making cars. You had carriage makers having a go at making cars, and so nobody really knew what the answer was. So there were loads of really exciting solutions, and I feel like we're in that kind of moment again right now. So it's obviously, there's going to be a huge shift, and it's just really great to be in this amazing, exciting time.
What about hydrogen? That seems to quietly, what are you, a fan of hydrogen? Where's that going? It keeps on coming up and then disappearing.
Yeah, I think hydrogen has issues, I guess. And I think it's definitely going to be part of the solution. And I think you can put a sniff of hydrogen into a diesel engine, you can actually get rid of the emissions, pretty much, which is amazing. It's like, well, why aren't we doing that? And that's because, obviously, the infrastructure, that's quite tricky. It does go bang quite well, so it's also quite dangerous, more so than fuel. So I think it's one of those things, it will be part of the solution. It just case of somebody actually making it safe enough and making the infrastructure safe enough.
Could you build one, or has it got a high-tech thing?
You can stick some electrodes in a bit of water and then you can make hydrogen, so it's not that hard to do.
But you haven't yet blown yourself up.
Well, you've got to be careful, that's the point. So I think we will dabble with that, and I think there may be an episode of a show, who knows? Would anyone like to see me play with hydrogen? There we are then, it's going to happen. Brilliant.
Have anyone any questions from the audience? Anything you especially want to know we missed out on? Hand up if you want. Yes, sir.